I'm going to go to another part, which is called Mama Schizophrenia. I wanted the lemonade stand, sleepovers, and just to be a kid, not a century in the battle. God damn you. The line, not a century in the battle, went straight to my heart. So many things come to mind, but the question that I had for this part of your memoir is, what was it like for you to navigate school and friendships while managing what was going on at home? Because when you mentioned I wanted the lemonade stand and the sleepovers, really our desire is just to be a normal kid and to fit in and have a normal experience. And obviously, we don't know what's going on with other kids, but you know what's going on at home. And you know that you can't define what it is, but you know that you're not happy. You're just a total mess. So, what was that like for you?
I had a lot of frustration because my mother, and from her perspective, I can see this, but just speaking from my perspective as the child, I was not allowed really to sleep over hardly at all with anyone. I was not allowed, people weren't allowed to really come to my house very much. There was one neighborhood girl that could come. I wasn't allowed to go to camp. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. When I was in eighth grade and I took algebra, my mother wanted me to teach her algebra when I came home until Mama really lost it when I was 15. And she never came back from that. We had to play board games. Like we had to go to Shoney's to get dinner, and then we had to play board games. And it took me like maybe a decade to want to play a board game because I had to play board games and canasta with Mama. What she was trying to do was grab something to bring her back. I wanted to make it very clear in my memoir that my mother and schizophrenia are two different things. And so when I called it Inside Out Mama Schizophrenia, I was speaking about schizophrenia as a co-parent, and Mama Schizophrenia is what I call her. And I only determined that as I was able to finally write some of these things down after trying multiple times. And what I love about that is my mother said God damn like all the time. Not God damn, but God damn, like all the time. When I was 5 years old, she told me Christmas morning, God damn your soul. Like, I mean, I've heard God damn more than I've heard probably any other word in my life. So what I loved about that poem is I said, God damn you,
Yeah.
to the disease itself. And that was me taking control and sharing my rage with the disease. Part of this is the world can't understand. I know everyone's going to say that about everything that they go through, but there really is hardly any support network for children of schizophrenics and probably the mentally ill in general. A lot of people can't understand, which is partly why I've had so much anxiety because I've put this out there, and it's quite a lot. I mean, it is. I don't share everything, but I'd certainly share delusions.
I think you capture perfectly both parts. Not only the experience that your mum had, the way that you would observe the symptoms, and I just love the way that you say that schizophrenia was a co-parent, because really that's what it was. And you're the only person that I've heard express this concept. Schizophrenia raised me. I mean, it's so obvious, and yet I've never mentioned it in that way, and it's true. The way that you talk to us about the experiences your mum had, these are real glimpses of what a schizophrenic patient is like. And I think that that sums up, it's not that it was just like, oh, I'm telling my story. It really was very rounded. More than anything, I think that you were being honest in the way that you were writing, because you weren't attacking your mum. You were just showing us what it was like. 20th century Jesus. Seeing me outside the kitchen window, she heads for the shotgun rack. 3 to choose from. She plans to kill me. I try to reason with her and yell at the invisible he who's calling the shots. Oh my God. Every single poem, I was getting chills because it's the reality that we live. And there's so much going on that what I found is that I couldn't express a lot of things. Like, you're not even dealing with one situation when you have stacked on top of you another 20 crises. And so what happens is that you're just moving through life and everything kind of just becomes unresolved. And you try and analyze why, because for many years we didn't have a diagnosis either. And I would wonder, why is this? When I was a kid, I would think this is my fault. When I would see my mom acting in these bizarre manners, I would think it could be because I misbehaved this morning, and I would blame it on myself. Our minds, the way that we try and handle these situations, it's not the best, but you're doing the best that you can as a kid with no support. I try to reason with her and yell at the invisible he who's calling the shots.
And the last line of that poem, but there's a new God in town.
The question that I had related to 20th century Jesus was about the grief that we carry on a daily basis. I mean, we can't even begin to delve into that, because on a day to day, you're struggling getting through it. You're just trying to make it through the day. What do you think has brought you the deepest grief?
Ooh, that's a doozy, huh? That's a doozy question. I don't know that I can answer that question. I probably can't answer that question because I'm not in touch enough with the parts of me that are at a loss. I mean, I'm becoming more in touch with those parts. I think an easy answer to a hard question would be this sense of isolation and lack of self-worth.
Hmm.
These things I can access. I will always feel isolated from almost everyone. I will always feel that almost everyone cannot understand. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I'm just saying these are things that cause me grief, and maybe that will change. And it's very hard for me to believe I'm worth anything. And I think those are things that I really, if I could have compassion for myself, which I'm learning to, and I think even the way I'm talking right now should say a lot. Like, I'm really trying to heal. And I think healing is just going to be a very long process. Because of my job, and I see so many people that go through trauma, I always deflect. I always rationalize, but what about my mother? Have you considered what she went through? Or look at person X or look at person Y, and oh my goodness, or it's very hard for me to say, look at me, whether that's to myself or to someone else. And I've had several people read my memoir, and I've had a couple of people come up to me that I know personally and say, can I hug you? And my response was, no, you may not, but thank you for offering. I mean, I wrote it because I want to have conversations. I wrote it because I want a community. I wrote it because I want to connect. I want to share stories. I want to feel less alone. I want to feel more understood. I want to be around. I want to hear what people say. Like, what was their greatest grief? How did they cope? How did they do that? Let's share stories. Let's grow. Let's bond. I didn't write it because I think my story it's my story and it's important for my voice. But your story is important for your voice. So I hope in this I left some ambiguity so that it could be, I mean, it was all mine, but I think anyone who's been through any of it can write themselves into it, right? The feelings of being trapped, the feelings of being misunderstood, the feelings of being isolated. And it was very important that people could write themselves into that so we could all feel a release. Like Dr. Margaret Brown's book, Growing Up with a Schizophrenic Mother, just reading some of those stories, they were not mine, but they allowed me to feel a release
Exactly.
and a lack of aloneness. And I think that's probably my greatest grief. Thank you for letting me talk through that. Probably just the feeling of feeling so isolated.
I think write these questions, and I don't know how fair I was in. So I think that was like a hard question. I've been in therapy for a year and a half now, and the part that I just cannot reconcile with is having lost a mom, and she's still alive. It's really hard. And then there's the other offshoots, when you just said not believing that you're worth anything or worth enough. God, that's something that I've carried with me and I've tried to work through. I'm a singer, and it's very competitive. The whole time that I've sung, I've always had this voice in the back of my mind saying, you're not good enough. And so there's that extra struggle. It's not only you getting ready for your job, it's psyching yourself up for that and saying, you can, you can, you can. Like, and just being completely mortified while having to carry out like these normal gigs that I do. And it's a lot of hard work. Like up here, there's so much going on and it's very draining. I have to say, Anne, I'm not trying to get goodie points from you, but I loved your memoir. I absolutely loved it. It was touching. I cried. I felt like I could have, and I'm not saying that, oh, anybody can write like this. No, because they are your words and the way that you have written this so beautifully, that is all you. But what I'm trying to say is that I identified with everything. I think the word for me that I've found through these interviews is that being able to talk to somebody else validates the years that I was isolated, where I had to keep this secret, where I couldn't tell anybody, only my best friend knew. And it was hard putting up a front all the time. I'm kind of like the one that jokes around. And when I am down, I disappear. I don't like to have anybody see me and ask me, hey, what's going on? Because usually when I'm locked up in my home, it's that I'm going through a rough moment. Catharsis. Between my trembling fingers lay my sweet 16 prom pick. I began to rip bits of my smile, stab my eyes, amputate my hands and feet, and shred the white gun sax gown. My youth littered the soft carpet at my bare feet, but it was not enough. I slapped and punched my face, my arms, my back, and my sides. Only then could I feel a release, and silent tears fell. When I was 14, I started to hurt myself. I would punch walls, I would kick walls, I would dig my nails into my skin and just scratch. Many years later, I understood that it was my way of finding release. I felt like I was going to explode every minute of the day from so much frustration and anger and sadness and having to deal with all of these bizarre situations. And it was my way of coming down to like a neutral point in myself, if that makes any sense. But it was me screaming until literally it hurt. I would destroy my bedroom. I would just rip into it, have everything on the floor. I would break anything I could get my hands on. And I would cry and just slouch down on the floor. And then I would be better. Was that similar to your experience?
It was. When I could get away from mom, I would go in my room, and I was also an adolescent, and but I couldn't make any noise, so I would hit myself. I couldn't cry either, but I would just like have tears, like silent tears fell. So I mean, I've been repressed for a very long time.
Oh my God, I can't imagine not being able to make noise, because what I would do was put music on really loud and just go, "Rah!" like, and scream. I would also sing. That was also an escape. But what I felt, what I understood later was that the pain that I felt inside, I needed to feel it physically.
Right.
I needed to transfer it from here to this, to, yes, I got a bruise. I did this to myself. And so what, And it was kind of like, well, if I can take this, if I can take my mom's situation and I can take my own, beatings, well, I can take on life.
And I didn't know because I used to hit myself, and I did it even through my first relationship because it was just a coping mechanism, right? For both my relationships were not good choices. But what I never knew is, people who cut, cutting is a thing, that hitting yourself is in the same family, right? It's just a different way of handling it. And I never knew that because, again, when you hit yourself, like no one talks about people hitting themselves. They talk about people cutting. People talk about people cutting, but they didn't used to. But now they do. But no one still talks about people hitting themselves. So again, like it's almost like
Yeah.
Can I do anything that's normal? Can I do anything that anyone can relate to? So
Right.
you're one of the only other people I've ever met who said, I used to beat myself up. Like,
Oh my God.
you know
You're
what I
the
mean? But
only person.
yes, I mean, so it's just like, you're just like, okay, well, I'm just crying, I'm just, and that's the fear. Like, what's wrong with me? But you're just so frustrated because where do you put the angst? Because you're the caretaker for your mom or your dad or whoever. And when you're the caretaker for somebody, you can't blame them because you see all their deficits.
That's right.
So you can't say you're the reason, it's your problem. So there's nowhere else to put it.
Right.
So you absorb it.
Exactly.